Jack Nicklaus looked Brian Rolapp in the eye at Muirfield Village and said something no CEO of the PGA Tour has ever heard from an 18-time major champion. Not a suggestion, not a polite concern, a warning, the kind that makes the entire sport stop and ask whether the game they love is about to become something they no longer recognize. Nicklaus did not walk into that meeting to shake hands or make small talk. He walked in because he believes the man now running the tour is about to tear apart everything that made it matter. Two men sat at one table on the course Nicklaus built with his own hands. One spent a lifetime earning every inch of the tour's legacy through majors, records, and decades of grinding. The other walked in from the NFL with a plan to rebuild the entire structure from the ground up. When those two versions of golf finally met face to face, what came out of that room was not a compromise. It was a declaration. And it was aimed directly at the future of professional golf. Not just the schedule, not just the format, the identity of what it means to be a PGA Tour player. The thing that separated this tour from every other league on earth. The thing that made a kid in Ohio or Scotland or South Africa dream about earning a card one day. That dream is what was sitting on the table between them. By the end of this, you will know exactly what Nicklaus told Rolapp, why he chose those specific words, and whether the greatest player in the history of the sport is right that the PGA Tour is being destroyed from the inside out. I genuinely believe Nicklaus earned the right to say whatever he wants about this tour after 60 years in the game. Tell me if you agree, or if Rolapp's changes are exactly what golf needs right now. If you want the real story behind golf's biggest fights without the surface-level coverage, subscribe. I go deeper here. What Nicklaus said in that room was supposed to stay private. It did not. The side it picked started with a single conversation that was never meant to leave the clubhouse at Muirfield Village. Nicklaus invited Rolapp to his course not as a formality. He invited him because he wanted the man about to run professional golf to stand on the fairways he designed, walk the greens he shaped over 40 years, and understand exactly what he was about to change. This was not a boardroom. This was Nicklaus's life work laid out in grass and sand. And in that space, Nicklaus did not soften a single word. He sat Rolapp down and told him, face to face, that the plan being built for the tour's future would damage the sport beyond repair. He did not sugarcoat it. He did not frame it as a concern or a suggestion. He delivered it the way he delivered every approach shot for 30 years, straight at the pin, no curve, no mercy. Rolapp sat there and took it. He thanked Nicklaus for his time. He shook his hand. He walked off the property. And for 3 weeks after that handshake, Nicklaus waited. He watched. He checked the schedules, the memos, the board communications coming out of Ponte Vedra. He gave Rolapp the chance to do the right thing, to modify the plan, to listen. 3 weeks of silence from the one man in golf whose silence should have been treated as a countdown. 3 weeks later, Rolapp stood in front of the golf world and announced the exact direction Nicklaus had warned him against. Not a modified version, not a compromise, the same structure, the same plan, as if the meeting at Muirfield Village never happened. Rolapp thought that was the end of it. He had no idea Nicklaus was about to take the fight public. Before those public words landed, you need to understand what Rolapp actually announced. Because without that context, Nicklaus's reaction looks like an old man yelling at clouds. And it is not. Not even close. What Rolapp unveiled in June 2026 was not a schedule tweak. It was not a minor adjustment to qualifying rules. It was a complete dismantling of how the PGA Tour has operated for over 50 years. He introduced a structure that splits the entire tour into 2 separate tiers, one for the elite, one for everyone else. Players move between them based on performance, like a European soccer league. Promotion up, relegation down. The tour stopped being one unified competition, where the best play the best every single week. It became a ladder, and ladders have a bottom. That bottom is not abstract. That bottom is a 32-year-old player who spent 8 years on the Korn Ferry Tour, finally earned his card, moved his family to Jacksonville, bought a house near TPC Sawgrass, built his entire life around the security of being a PGA Tour member, and one Tuesday morning he gets an email telling him his card is gone because the number dropped from 125 to 100. No warning, no phase-in, no appeal, just a spreadsheet decision made by a man who has never played a professional golf shot in his life. That is the bottom. That is what relegation looks like when it hits a real person with a mortgage and a 2-year-old daughter. 25 fully exempt tour cards vanished overnight. Reduced from 125 to 100. Players who spent a decade grinding through Korn Ferry events, Monday qualifiers, and sponsor exemptions to earn their place on the PGA Tour were told their status no longer existed. No transition period, No grandfather clause, just a number cut and a new reality. Veterans who had built their entire lives around the security of a tour card suddenly had nothing guaranteed. The tour's official explanation was pace of play. Lucas Glover called that explanation insulting. Matt Fitzpatrick backed him publicly and said it was pathetic that the same excuse gets recycled every year while nothing actually changes. The players saw through it immediately. This was not about pace of play. This was about restructuring the product. Their anger was not just about the numbers. It was about what those numbers represented. For 50 years, earning a PGA Tour card meant you had arrived. It meant you were one of the best 125 players on the planet. It meant your name was in the record books alongside Nicklaus, Palmer, Watson, Tiger. It meant something permanent. Rolapp turned that permanence into a temporary contract. One bad season and you are out. One injury and you are replaced. The card that used to be a lifetime achievement became a yearly audition. Their anger was loud. The man with 18 majors was about to make them sound quiet. Nicklaus's objection went deeper than any single rule change. To understand why he reacted the way he did, you need to understand how he views the PGA Tour. Nicklaus played in an era where every event mattered equally, where the best players in the world showed up every Thursday and earned their place over 4 days. No tiers, no tracks, no second division. You were good enough or you were not. That was the deal. That was the contract between the player and the tour. And Nicklaus believes that contract is the entire foundation of what makes professional golf legitimate. Remove it, and you do not have a sport anymore. You have a content schedule. In Nicklaus's era, the PGA Tour was a meritocracy with teeth. You qualified through Q School, or you earned your way through the developmental circuit. Once you had your card, you played every week against the best. There was no hiding, no coasting, no second-tier safety net. If you missed cuts, you lost your card. If you won, you became a legend. The pressure was constant. The standard was absolute, and that standard produced the greatest generation of golfers the sport has ever seen. Nicklaus watched that system build Palmer, Player, Watson, Crenshaw, Kite, and dozens of others. It worked. It produced greatness because it demanded greatness every single Thursday morning. He made that argument for 60 years without raising his voice. Through every interview, every course design meeting, every conversation with commissioners past and present. The tour was one thing, one unified stage, one meritocracy. You earned your spot. You kept it by performing. The best beat the best. That was golf. That was the only version of golf Nicklaus ever respected. And now the man sitting in the CEO chair was about to erase it with a stroke of a pen and a PowerPoint presentation. McIlroy was the first active player to say publicly what the entire locker room was thinking privately. He called the lower tier glorified Corn Ferry events. 4 words that cut straight to the fear every player outside the top 20 has been living with since the announcement. If your event is classified as the second tier, your sponsors see less value. Your TV window shrinks. Your fans stop watching. Your career becomes a waiting room for the real tour. McIlroy understood that immediately. He has been the loudest voice in the locker room for years, and even he sounded shaken when he described what the Challenger Series would actually look like for the players stuck in it. Not a step down. A dead end dressed up as opportunity. And the sponsors know it. The moment an event is branded as the second tier, the money moves. The TV deals shrink. The hospitality tents empty. The players in that tier are not competing for a career anymore. They are competing for a promotion back to the tier that matters. Thomas came next, and he did not hold back a single syllable. He called the USGA's decision-making selfish and asked whether they would make a mile longer so the fastest mile time does not change, or raise the NBA hoop because players can jump higher. The quote went viral within hours. It was funny. It was sharp. It was also deadly serious. Thomas was pointing at the same problem Nicklaus had identified months earlier in that private meeting at Muirfield Village. The people making these decisions were not the people living with the consequences. They were restructuring a sport they never played at the highest level, and they were doing it without the consent of the men who actually compete every week. Thomas has 4 major championships. He has played in over 300 PGA Tour events. He knows what it takes to survive on this tour. And he knows that the men in the boardroom have never felt a 6-foot putt to keep their card on a Sunday afternoon. Thomas gave the players a voice. Nicklaus gave them a legacy to defend. Rolapp was losing both. Here is the contradiction Rolapp cannot escape. He needs Jack Nicklaus. He needs Tiger Woods. He needs the legends, the history, the prestige, the weight of 60 years of major championships and Sunday red shirts. He needs the fans to believe the PGA Tour is the same institution it has always been, that its history matters, that its records mean something, that walking onto a PGA Tour fairway carries a weight no other sport can replicate. He needs all of that because without it, his new structure is just another sports league fighting for attention against the NFL, the NBA, and every streaming platform on earth. The prestige is the product. The history is the brand. And the man building the new structure is actively alienating the only people who can give him that prestige. If Nicklaus walks away, the Memorial Tournament loses its connection to the Tour's new model. If Tiger refuses to participate in the planning process, the Championship Series launches without its most valuable endorsement. If the old guard collectively decides this is not the tour they built, the 2028 season opens with a hollow center. The structure will exist. The schedule will be printed. The purses will be posted. But the soul will be missing. And fans can feel when the soul is missing. They felt it during the LIV years. They will feel it again if the legends pull their names off the building. 18 months. That is all the time left before the tour, as it has existed for 50 years, stops existing. Jay Monahan steps down at the end of 2026. Rolapp becomes the official commissioner on January 1st, 2027. The two-tier model goes live for the 2028 season. That is the timeline. That is the window. The PAC meetings are already happening. The player votes are already being scheduled. The sponsor contracts are already being rewritten around the new structure. This is not a proposal anymore. This is a moving train. And Nicklaus is standing on the tracks with his arms crossed, daring the people in the cab to run him over. The next 18 months will decide what professional golf looks like for the next 20 years. And the man who gets to make that decision has already made up his mind. Nicklaus will use the Memorial Tournament every June as his platform. Every interview, every press conference, every quiet word to a reporter at the back of the scoring tent. He will not stop talking. He will not stop pushing. He will make sure that every fan who watches the Memorial knows exactly what is being done to their sport. And Rolapp knows he cannot silence him. You do not silence Jack Nicklaus. You do not bench the man who won 18 majors. You can only hope he gets tired. He will not get tired. Nicklaus tried to stop it privately. He tried to stop it politely. What he did next was neither. The deeper fight here is not about field sizes or exempt cards or promotion and relegation. Those are symptoms. The real fight is about who gets to define what golf is. Nicklaus believes golf is a test of character, patience, and skill accumulated over decades. You earn your place. You keep it by performing. The best play the best every week, and the best wins. That is the sport. Rolapp believes golf is a product, a media property, a content vertical that needs to compete for eyeballs against the NFL, the Premier League, and TikTok. In his version, the tour is a show. The players are talent. The schedule is programming. And the fans are consumers who need to be entertained or they will change the channel. Those two visions cannot coexist. One of them has to die. The tour spent 3 years fighting LIV golf by saying it was different, by saying the meritocracy mattered, by saying the history mattered, by saying the players were not just content creators in colored shorts. And now its own CEO is building the exact structure LIV proposed. The irony is not subtle. The irony is not accidental. The irony is the entire reason Nicklaus chose the words he chose when he finally went public. Because he saw it coming. He saw it from a mile away. He sat Rolapp down at Muirfield Village and told him to his face. And when Rolapp ignored him, Nicklaus did what he has always done when the game he loves is under threat. He stood up. He spoke. He made it impossible to ignore. Nicklaus did not call a press conference. He did not post a statement. He did it the only way that mattered. Through the Memorial Tournament. Through the interviews he gives at Muirfield Village every June. Through the quiet, measured words of a man who knows that when he speaks, the entire sport listens. He told reporters that the two-tier model would fracture the tour beyond repair. He said reducing exempt cards punishes the players who built the institution. He said promotion and relegation turns the PGA Tour into something it was never meant to be. And then he said the words that became the headline. The words that made every golf fan on earth stop and reread the quote 3 times to make sure they were reading it correctly. He looked at the camera and said Rolapp's plan is destroying golf. Not changing it, not evolving it, not modernizing it, destroying it. The word he chose was deliberate. The word he chose was final. And the word he chose made it impossible for Rolapp to pretend this was a disagreement. It was a verdict. Nicklaus has been right about golf for 60 years. Right about course design. Right about major preparation. Right about what separates good players from great ones. Right about what makes the sport endure when every other trend fades. If he says these changes will destroy golf, The question is not whether he is exaggerating. The question is whether anyone will listen before the 2028 season tees off and the tour that Hogan played, that Palmer played, that Nicklaus played, that Tiger played becomes a memory. The next time you watch a PGA Tour event, ask yourself whether you are watching golf or a version of golf rebuilt for someone else. Nicklaus already made his choice. He stood at Muirfield Village and said it to the man's face. The rest of us have 18 months to make ours. If this story matters to you, share it with someone who loves this game as much as you do. Subscribe, because this fight is far from over.